to do all live shows at night. But when I do promotion, different schedule.
At 85, Tom Jones sits alone in his London apartment, the walls lined with gold records that catch the morning light but reflect nothing of the roaring crowds that once chanted his name. His powerful voice, that volcanic force that made women throw their undergarments on stage, now sometimes trembles when he speaks of Linda, his wife of 59 years, gone now for almost a decade. Not just a singer who sold 100 million records, but a man who outlived nearly everyone who knew him before fame rewrote his story. Not just a sex symbol whose tight pants and open shirts became his uniform, but now an elder statesman of music who carries the weight of a South Wales mining town in every note. If his journey from tuberculosis-stricken child to international icon moved you, if his resilience through devastating loss inspires you, perhaps this tribute will honor what he gave to music and what music took from him in return. Before the world knew his name, before It's Not Unusual erupted from radios across the globe, before the knighthood and the countless women who claimed pieces of him, Tom Jones was simply Thomas John Woodward, born June 7, 1940, in the industrial coal town of Pontypridd, Wales. The son of a coal miner, young Thomas entered a world at war. As Hitler's bombs fell on nearby Cardiff, his father, Thomas Woodward Sr., descended daily into the darkness of the mines, returning home with coal dust embedded so deeply in his skin that it seemed part of him. His mother, Frida, a homemaker with an unshakable spirit, ran their modest terrace house on Kingsland Terrace with the fierce pride of the Welsh working class. At age 12, tuberculosis struck, a disease that would fundamentally alter his path. Confined to his bedroom for 2 years, the energetic boy who once raced through Pontypridd's narrow streets became a prisoner in his own home. The walls of his small room, papered with images of American singers like Elvis Presley and Jerry Lee Lewis, became his only window to a wider world. I could hear life going on without me, Jones would later recall. The laughter of children playing in the street, the calls of the coal merchants, the clatter of my father's work boots returning home. But mostly, I remember the radio. It was there in that small bedroom with its single window overlooking the gray Welsh landscape that Thomas Woodward discovered the power of his own voice. While his body healed, he would sing along to American rhythm and blues records, his voice growing stronger as his body had weakened. His mother would pause at his doorway, laundry basket balanced on her hip, listening to the surprising power emerging from her frail son. One rain-soaked Sunday afternoon, as coal smoke hung in the air and the distant sound of hymns drifted from the chapel down the road, Thomas's uncle witnessed something that would become family legend. As the radio played a Bill Haley song, the bedridden boy sang with such force that the teacups rattled on their saucers. His uncle, eyes wide with astonishment, turned to Frida and said words that would prove prophetic. "This boy won't follow his father down the mines. His voice will be his salvation." The tuberculosis that threatened to destroy him instead gave him his first audience. His family gathered around his sickbed, marveling at the voice that seemed too big for his chest, too mature for his years, too powerful to be contained in the small terraced house in Pontypridd. When he finally recovered and returned to school, Thomas was different, not just physically, but in his conviction. While other boys discussed following their fathers into the mines, he spoke of music, of singing, of a life beyond the valleys. His classmates mocked these dreams, unable to imagine that the son of a miner could escape the gravitational pull of their industrial town. But within that coal-dusted community, where ambition was often crushed under the weight of practicality, Thomas had been forged by illness into something resilient. The voice that had kept him company during those long, isolated days would become his ticket to a life his neighbors couldn't imagine. By 16, Thomas had already defied local expectations twice. First, by refusing to follow the path to the coal mines. Second, by marrying his childhood sweetheart, Linda Trenchard, after she became pregnant with their son, Mark. In 1950s Wales, such youthful indiscretions typically meant hasty wedding, followed by a lifetime of struggle. But Thomas wouldn't accept that narrative. Night after night, he performed in local workingmen's clubs, his voice rising above the clinking glasses and argumentative patrons. The smoke-filled rooms became his training ground, each difficult crowd a lesson in commanding attention.
I think I sound better singing them now than I did 20 years ago or 30 years ago.
While men his age were learning to excavate coal, he was excavating something from within himself, a performer's instinct, a survivor's determination. I wasn't just singing, he would later reflect. I was fighting against becoming what everyone expected, fighting to be heard over drunken conversations, fighting to convince Linda that her faith in me wasn't misplaced. Rejection followed rejection. Pub owners dismissed him as too raw, too Welsh, too much. Record producers in London returned his demos without comment. Each night, he'd return to the small flat he shared with Linda and their young son, his throat raw from singing, his pride bruised from indifference. Linda worked as a factory worker, packing batteries to support the family while Thomas pursued his seemingly impossible dream. Her hands, once soft, grew calloused. Her eyes, once bright with youthful optimism, now carried the weary determination of a young mother betting everything on her husband's voice. She never once asked me to stop, Tom would later say, his voice catching. Not once did she suggest I find real work. She believed when no one else did. In 1964, after countless disappointments, Thomas connected with Gordon Mills, a London-based manager who saw what others had missed. Mills recognized that the raw power in Thomas's voice wasn't a flaw. It was his greatest asset, but changes were needed. Thomas John Woodward is a coal miner's name, Mills declared. Tom Jones is a star's name. And so Thomas became Tom, taking his stage name from the Henry Fielding novel and the 1963 film. With this new identity came a new opportunity, a recording contract with Decca Records. The song that would change everything, It's Not Unusual, was initially written for Sandy Shaw. But upon hearing Tom's powerful rendition during the demo recording, it was clear the song belonged to him. When it was released in 1965, it shot to #1 in the UK and cracked the American top 10. From a sickbed in Pontypridd to the top of the charts, Tom Jones had arrived. The voice that had once rattled teacups in a Welsh terrace house was now rattling the foundations of the music industry. But as his star ascended, the gravitational pull of fame began to separate him from the simple life he once knew, and from the woman who had believed in him when belief was all they had. The transformation was as sudden as it was complete. One day, Tom Jones was fighting to be heard in Welsh pubs. The next, he was deafened by screams as he stepped onto television sets and concert stages. Women threw their hotel keys, their undergarments, their phone numbers scrawled on perfume notes. The shy Welsh boy became the voice, became the body, became an international sex symbol virtually overnight. Not just a singer with unprecedented vocal power, but a performer whose hip gyrations and unbuttoned shirts created a new template for male sexuality in popular music. Not just a hit maker, but a phenomenon whose concerts resembled religious revivals where inhibition was the sin and abandon the virtue. Between 1965 and 1975, Jones released a string of hits that displayed his remarkable versatility: the thunderous Thunderball for the James Bond franchise, the playful What's New Pussycat, the haunting Green Grass of Home, and the explosive Delilah. His voice could caress a ballad or attack a rock song with equal conviction. Las Vegas became his American kingdom. In 1977, he began a relationship with the city that would span decades, commanding $300,000 per week at the Flamingo Hotel, an astronomical sum that reflected his drawing power. Night after night, the casino showrooms filled with women who came not just to hear him, but to witness the full spectacle of Tom Jones in his prime. When Tom sang, it wasn't just his voice filling the room, recalled a Vegas showgirl who worked during his residency. It was like something primal had been unleashed. The women would lose all inhibition. I've never seen anything like it before or since. Elvis Presley, already a legend himself, became both a friend and an admirer. The two powerhouses, both poor boys who had risen to unimaginable heights, recognized in each other a shared journey. "You got it, man," Elvis told him after watching his Vegas show. "You got the voice and the moves." His television show, This Is Tom Jones, debuted in 1969 and ran for 3 successful seasons, bringing his charismatic performances into living rooms across America and Britain. The biggest stars of the day, Aretha Franklin, Janis Joplin, Stevie Wonder, Sonny and Cher, all appeared alongside the Welsh powerhouse, affirming his place in the musical firmament. In 1970, at just 30 years old, Tom Jones had achieved more than most performers accomplish in a lifetime. The coal miner's son had been embraced by royalty, having performed multiple Royal Command performances for Queen Elizabeth II. The boy who once sang to his family in Pontypridd was now singing for presidents and prime ministers. Yet beneath this extraordinary success, cracks were forming in the foundation of his life. Linda, the teenage bride who had believed in him, remained in the UK while Tom conquered America. She refused to fly, refused to attend his shows, refused to witness the women who threw themselves at her husband. Their son Mark, however, became Tom's manager, creating a professional bridge between the stars' two worlds. The distance between Pontypridd and Las Vegas couldn't be measured in miles alone. With each sold-out show, with each new hit, with each famous name added to his circle of friends, the gulf between the life he now led and the one he had left behind grew wider. The same voice that had been his salvation was now creating an existential paradox. The more successful Tom Jones became, the further he drifted from Thomas Woodward, and in that expanding space between his two selves, temptations multiplied like echoes in an empty hall. The statistics of Tom Jones's infidelity read like the excesses of his career. Reportedly 250 groupies a year at his peak, a 2-year affair with Mary Wilson of the Supremes, a relationship with Miss World Marjorie Wallace that made international headlines, and countless one-night stands that blurred together in the haze of touring. Most famously, his relationship with Catherine Berkery resulted in a son, Jonathan, born in 1988, a child Tom refused to acknowledge until a DNA test confirmed paternity in 2008. Even then, he made no attempt to establish a relationship with his second son, a rejection that stands in stark contrast to the close bond he maintained with Mark. Yet through it all, the women, the press exposés, the public humiliations, Linda remained his wife. She stayed in their home, initially in the UK and later in Los Angeles, creating a sanctuary away from the maelstrom of his public life. When asked why she stayed, she reportedly answered with Welsh practicality, "I married Tommy Woodward, not Tom Jones. I knew him when he was nobody, and that's the man I still love."
Because a thing came out in the newspaper, and I think she was more bothered because it was in the press.
Their marriage became one of the great paradoxes of celebrity, publicly broken but privately enduring. While Tom lived the life of a star, Linda created a life defined by its normalcy, gardening, cooking, maintaining friendships that had nothing to do with the entertainment industry. "She's the rock that I've built my life around," Tom admitted in a rare moment of public vulnerability during a 1980s interview. The irony of this statement, given his notorious infidelities, was not lost on the interviewer or the public, but perhaps there was a deeper truth in it than most recognized. While Tom Jones, the performer, belonged to the world, Thomas Woodward still belonged to Linda. The 1980s brought a commercial decline that tested both his career resilience and his marriage. The hits became less frequent, the Vegas showrooms less crowded. New musical trends, punk, new wave, early hip-hop, made his powerful, dramatic style seem suddenly dated. The sex symbol was aging. The voice, while still remarkable, no longer commanded automatic attention in a changing musical landscape. It was during this valley in his career that Linda's importance became most evident. While fame receded, she remained constant. While new audiences failed to materialize, she continued to believe. The woman who had packed batteries in a factory to support his early dreams now helped him navigate the humbling experience of commercial irrelevance. In 1987, Mark, now firmly established as his father's manager, orchestrated what would become one of the great second acts in popular music. He convinced his father to record Prince's Kiss, reinventing the song as a showcase for Tom's still powerful voice. The collaboration with electronic group Art of Noise introduced Tom Jones to a new generation. Suddenly, the has-been was cool again. This renaissance continued into the 1990s with the album The Lead and How to Swing It, and peaked with 1999's Reload, an album of duets with contemporary artists like The Cardigans, Moose T, and Robbie Williams. The single Sex Bomb became an international hit, cementing his comeback. Through this professional rebirth, Linda remained in the background, still avoiding public appearances, still maintaining the private sphere of their relationship, while Tom reclaimed his public persona. It was as if they had established an unspoken agreement. His career belonged to the world, but his true self belonged to her. "Every time I come home from touring," Tom once said, "I leave Tom Jones at the door. When I'm with Linda, I'm Tommy again."
In these old houses, they were houses that were built for coal mining. One toilet at the bottom of the garden.
This delicate balance, the public icon and the private man, the international sex symbol and the devoted husband, defined the second half of his life. It was a complex arrangement that defied conventional understanding, but somehow worked for them across 6 decades of marriage, until suddenly it didn't have to work anymore, because Linda was gone. On April 10, 2016, after a short but fierce battle with lung cancer, Linda Jones died at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. She was 75 years old. At her side was the man she had married 59 years earlier, when both were just 16. Not the star, not the icon, but Tommy Woodward, the boy from Pontypridd who had promised to love her forever. "I was on tour in the Philippines when Linda fell ill," Tom would later reveal, his voice unusually subdued. "I canceled everything and flew back immediately. I knew something was seriously wrong, because she'd never asked me to come home before." The man who had performed through fevers, through exhaustion, through personal crises of all kinds, stopped everything for Linda. For 10 days, he sat by her hospital bed, holding her hand, speaking to her of their life together, of memories that only they shared. In those final days, the distance between Tom Jones and Thomas Woodward collapsed. There was no performance to give, no audience to please except the one person who had known him longest and perhaps best. When she passed, something fundamental shifted in him. The legendary performer, known for his almost superhuman energy on stage, canceled his entire tour. For months, he retreated from public view, unable or unwilling to resume the identity of Tom Jones while grieving Thomas Woodward's loss. "I didn't know if I would be able to sing again," he later confessed. "Every song reminded me of Linda. Every lyric seemed to be about loss. For the first time in my life, music offered no comfort." The man who had sung through every imaginable circumstance now found himself silenced by grief. The voice that had been his salvation as a tuberculosis-stricken child, that had lifted him from poverty to international stardom, that had sustained him through career highs and lows, that voice temporarily abandoned him in his darkest hour. When Tom finally returned to performing later in 2016, audiences witnessed a changed man. The swagger remained. The powerful voice still commanded attention, but a new vulnerability had entered his performances. Songs like Take My Love and Tomorrow Night took on deeper emotional resonance. The performer who had built a career on exuberance now revealed the power of restraint, of suggestion, of the spaces between notes. In a particularly poignant moment during his comeback tour, Tom performed Bob Dylan's What Good Am I?, a song questioning one's value if they cannot help those they love. Mid-performance, he stopped, overcome with emotion, then gathered himself and continued. The audience, understanding they were witnessing not just grief, but its transformation into art, responded with a standing ovation. The years following Linda's death brought other significant changes. Tom sold their Los Angeles mansion, the home they had shared for decades, finding it too haunted by memories. He returned to the UK permanently, buying an apartment in London where he could be closer to his son Mark and his extended family. "After Linda died, I realized I needed to go home," he explained simply. "Not to Pontypridd, That's gone now, at least the one I knew, but to Britain, to somewhere that made sense. In a gesture that surprised many who had followed his career, Tom also reached out to his estranged son Jonathan, attempting to establish some connection after decades of denial and distance. While their relationship remains complicated, this effort at reconciliation suggested a man taking stock of his life's decisions, seeking to make amends where possible before his own final curtain. For the man who had once seemed invincible on stage, mortality had become an unavoidable companion, and with it came reflection, regret, and a search for meaning beyond the applause that had defined his existence for so long. At 85, Tom Jones rises each morning in his London apartment overlooking the Thames, the first hours of his day marked by rituals that ground him in a world that continues to change around him. A cup of strong Welsh tea, the same brand his mother served, begins each day, followed by a simple breakfast he prepares himself. Despite his wealth, he employs no live-in staff, preferring solitude to the constant presence of others. I've spent most of my life surrounded by people, managers, band members, stagehands, fans, he explained in a recent rare interview. At this age, silence has become a luxury I never knew I needed. The walls of his apartment tell the story of his remarkable journey. Gold records hang alongside family photographs. Awards share space with handwritten lyrics. A black and white portrait of Linda, taken when both were in their 20s, occupies a central position in his bedroom. It's the last thing he sees before sleep, and the first thing that greets him upon waking. Not just an archive of professional accomplishments, but a curated museum of a life lived at the intersection of extraordinary success and ordinary human vulnerability. Not just the home of a star, but the sanctuary of an aging man who has outlived his wife, many of his contemporaries, and certain versions of himself. His daily routine is methodical, a framework that provides structure to days that might otherwise expand into emptiness. He reads 3 newspapers each morning, still maintaining a connection to the world, though he engages with it less directly now. A vocal exercise routine, practiced religiously since his early career, helps maintain the instrument that made him famous, though his voice has naturally lowered and roughened with age. On days when his knees allow, he walks along the river, a Welsh cap pulled low over his eyes, occasionally recognized but mostly left alone. These walks are meditative, allowing memories to surface and recede like the Thames tide. Sometimes he speaks aloud to Linda during these solitary journeys, continuing conversations that ended too soon. Twice weekly, a physical therapist visits to help manage the physical toll of decades of performing. The man whose athletic movements on stage once defined male sexuality now moves more carefully, his gait slowed but still purposeful. The hands that once emphasized emotional lyrics now sometimes tremble slightly, though they steady miraculously when he grasps a microphone. His son Mark calls daily, managing both his father's diminished but continuing career and the more complex task of ensuring his well-being. Their relationship, once defined by professional boundaries, has softened into something more tender, as both navigate the altered landscape that Linda's absence created. Mark is more than my son now, Tom admits. He's my memory keeper. Sometimes he reminds me of things I've forgotten about my own life. His voice on the phone is the thread that connects all my days. Despite his age, Tom still records and occasionally performs. His 2021 album, Surrounded by Time, became his 4th UK #1 album, making him the oldest male artist to achieve this distinction. When he does perform now, it's primarily seated, the physical dynamism of his youth replaced by a statesman-like gravitas. The voice, while changed, remains remarkable for a man of his years, a testament to both natural gift and disciplined care. Yet those closest to him note a profound sadness that descends in the quiet moments. The legendary performer who once commanded rooms with his mere presence now sometimes gets lost in thought, mid-conversation, his gaze drifting to windows that face a city he never truly considered home. His refrigerator contains single-portion meals, many prepared by his niece who visits weekly. The sight of this modest domestic detail, TV dinners for one, stands in stark contrast to memories of lavish backstage spreads and post-show celebrations that once defined his life. Each night before sleep, he follows another ritual, reviewing old photographs kept in leather albums beside his bed. Friends now gone, venues now demolished, moments of triumph now faded into history. Some evenings, he plays records from his own collection, not his music, but the rhythm and blues that first inspired him in that small bedroom in Pontypridd. The circle closes, he told a friend recently. I began listening to American singers in my bedroom as a boy. Now I'm an old man doing the same thing. The tragedy of Tom Jones at 85 is not found in any public decline or dramatic fall. It lies instead in the ordinary human experience of outliving your greatest love, of watching your contemporaries disappear one by one, of feeling time's relentless compression of future possibilities. It's the quiet tragedy of a man who lived several lifetimes of experience now facing the solitude that awaits us all, regardless of fame or accomplishment. Yet even in this melancholy chapter, flashes of the performer remain. Visitors report moments when the old charisma suddenly emerges, a story told with theatrical timing, a song fragment delivered with surprising power, a laugh that momentarily transforms his face back to the Tiger of Wales. These glimpses suggest that while time changes everything, it doesn't erase the essential qualities that defined a life. The voice may be weathered, the swagger tempered, but the spirit that carried a boy from the coal valleys of Wales to international stardom still flickers within the man of 85. What do we make of this journey? From tuberculosis-stricken child to international sex symbol to grieving widower to elder statesman of music. What lessons does the arc of Tom Jones offer about talent, ambition, love, loss, and the passage of time? Perhaps his greatest legacy lies not in the 100 million records sold or the countless awards accumulated, but in his remarkable ability to persist. While many of his contemporaries faded away, burned out, or succumbed to the excesses of fame, Tom Jones adapted and endured. The voice that sang It's Not Unusual in 1965 is the same voice, altered by time but unmistakable, that recorded I Won't Crumble With You If You Fall in 2021. This persistence required reinvention. The sex symbol became the sophisticated performer. The variety show staple became the respected interpreter of blues, gospel, and country. The Las Vegas spectacle became the nuanced artist. Few performers have successfully navigated so many musical eras, remaining relevant from the British invasion through the present streaming age. His relationship with Linda offers another dimension of his legacy, a complicated, imperfect, but enduring partnership that defied conventional understanding. Their marriage suggests that love accommodates contradictions, that commitment transcends traditional definitions, that two people can create a private language of belonging that outsiders may never fully comprehend. For younger generations discovering his music through samples, playlists, or parents' record collections, Tom Jones represents a kind of authenticity increasingly rare in the manufactured pop landscape. The raw power in his voice, the unfiltered sexuality in his performances, the absence of ironic distance or manufactured persona, these qualities speak to something primal in music that transcends eras and trends. If you grew up hearing She's a Lady on your parents' radio, if you discovered him through Reload in the 1990s, if you came to appreciate him through his role as a coach on The Voice UK, whatever your entry point to Tom Jones, you encountered a performer who never gave less than everything to his art. Now, as he navigates his 9th decade, that commitment continues, even as its expression necessarily changes. The man who once performed in unbuttoned shirts and tight pants, dripping with sweat and sexual charisma, now sits dignified in a chair, delivering songs with a wisdom and emotional depth that only time can provide. Perhaps you have a memory of Tom Jones that marked a moment in your own life, a first dance to Green Grass of Home, a parent who played his records on Sunday mornings, a concert that left you breathless with its energy. These personal connections form another dimension of his legacy, one created not in recording studios or on stages, but in the intimate spaces of individual lives touched by his art. As the sun sets on the Thames outside Tom Jones' window, as the gold records catch the fading light, as another day ends for the boy from Pontypridd, who became a global icon, perhaps we can offer a tribute worthy of his journey, not just recognition of his remarkable talent, but appreciation for his resilience through personal loss and professional challenges, not just admiration for his voice, but respect for how he's used that voice to connect generations, to bridge musical traditions, to express the full spectrum of human experience, from exuberant joy to profound grief. If his music has touched your life, if his story resonates with your own understanding of time's passage, consider sharing your memory in the comments below. Each recollection becomes part of the living legacy of an artist whose voice has echoed through decades of our collective history. For the man who sang the green, green grass of home when that home still existed, for the performer who asked, "What's new, pussycat?" when everything was new, for the grieving husband who wondered, "What good am I?" when facing unbearable loss, and for the elder who now ponders what remains when the applause fades, for Tom Jones, still with us at 85, still finding reasons to raise that powerful voice despite life's inevitable diminishments. Perhaps the greatest tribute is simply remembering that behind every legend is a human being navigating the same fundamental journey we all share. In the quiet of his London apartment as another day ends, Tom Jones likely does what we all do, remembers what was, contemplates what is, wonders what might yet be. The tragedy and the triumph of his life at 85 is that he does this alone, the last man standing in a story that once featured so many others. But as long as we remember, as long as we listen, as long as that voice continues to move us, he's never truly alone.